people have to lose their parents. This is life. You are born, you got your parents, they die. You can understand, you can explain. But a parent who can lose a son, especially in that age, I don't know even there is any name to call them. For me, life doesn't have anymore any meaning.
Police officers have criticized the BBC's new Panorama documentary for what they describe as a complete lack of balance in its portrayal of the shooting of Chris Kaba, a 24-year-old gang member killed by Met Police Sergeant Martin Blake. The officer shot Kaba in the head when he attempted to break through a police roadblock in Streatham. The BBC's portrayal of Kaba as unarmed, while he was in a vehicle police believed he could use to harm officers, has sparked frustration, especially following SGT Blake's recent acquittal on murder charges. The airing comes just 2 weeks after Kaba's associates allegedly placed a £10,000 bounty on SGT Blake's life. Kaba's parents appeared in the documentary, expressing their belief that officers should have tried to arrest their son rather than fatally shooting him. According to police footage, officers had repeatedly ordered Kaba to exit the vehicle before the shooting. Matt Cain, General Secretary of the Metropolitan Police Federation, condemned the BBC for failing to uphold impartiality, suggesting that this oversight jeopardizes the integrity of policing. He remarked, "Police officers will be stunned, but perhaps not surprised, about the utter lack of balance in the BBC Panorama documentary aired last night over the death of Chris Kaba. Officers shouldn't risk their lives and careers when they are lawfully carrying out their duties, as was the case here." Cain further objected to the BBC's focus on Kaba being unarmed, arguing that a car in the hands of a criminal can indeed be a weapon. SGT Blake's decision to open fire was reportedly based on concerns that Kaba would use the vehicle to harm officers. The situation that night was tense, with police already monitoring Kaba's Audi Q8, which was linked to a gang-related shooting the previous night in Brixton. Adding to the criticism, former Met Firearms officer Peter Bleksley questioned the documentary's accuracy. Bleksley accused the BBC of failing to disclose significant details, such as gunshot residue found on Kaba's sleeve and the balaclava he carried on the night of the shooting. Dear BBC Panorama, was it an oversight or a deliberate omission to fail to mention that there was firearm residue on Kaba's sleeve at the time he was shot, and that he was also in possession of a balaclava? He asked, implying that these details might alter the public's understanding of the case. The documentary also featured commentary from Sal Nassim, a former director at the Independent Office for Police Conduct, IOPC, who noted that the Met had questioned him on whether Kaba had a firearm in his car. Nassim recounted that a forensic examination confirmed no non-police firearms were recovered from Kaba's vehicle, despite inquiries from the Met that suggested they strongly hoped for a different outcome. "They were pressing me, 'Are you sure? Are you sure there's not a firearm here?' Yes, we were sure," he recalled, describing a sense within the Met that the outcome would be viewed differently if Kaba were armed. Nassim added that he questioned the justification behind SGT Blake's decision to shoot, suggesting that Kaba's perceived threat level may not have been as significant as claimed. The IOPC later clarified that Nassim's views did not represent its official stance on the case, adding that he was not a decision-maker in the investigation. Kaba's parents, Prosper and Helen, shared the intense grief they experienced following their son's death, with Prosper explaining how his loss had impacted him deeply. "A parent who loses a son, especially at that age, for me, life doesn't have any meaning," he shared, reflecting on the pain that has followed. Critics of the documentary's timing, such as former Met officer Chris Hobbs, noted the potential risks of broadcasting this episode amid ongoing tensions. Hobbs suggested that the documentary might intensify the existing threat to SGT Blake, especially given recent revelations about Kaba's gang affiliations and the alleged bounty on Blake's head. He commented, "The timing of this documentary is very questionable, given that there remains a significant threat to SGT Blake's life. We are now fully aware of the extreme levels of violence which surrounded Mr. Kaba and his fellow gang members. This documentary is therefore only likely to increase the risk faced by the officer who was found not guilty of murder." Another serving Met Firearms officer echoed this sentiment, describing the decision to broadcast the program as reckless given the circumstances. 2 weeks ago, SGT Blake was cleared of murder by a jury of his peers. They took just 3 hours to decide the case against him was unfounded, he stated. The officer added that in light of Kaba's gang history and the recent threat against SGT Blake, he hoped the BBC would delay such a contentious program. "Let's just hope this doesn't spark the sort of violent backlash that we feared following the verdict," he concluded. A BBC spokesperson defended the documentary, stating that the investigation was in the public interest and followed the broadcaster's editorial guidelines, including a commitment to impartiality. They encouraged viewers to watch the program in its entirety before forming their own conclusions. Kaba's gang background, which wasn't fully explored in the documentary, has drawn significant public attention. He was known to be a leading figure in the 67 gang, which police regard as one of the most violent gangs in South London. The gang had been embroiled in a bloody feud over control of County Line's drug trafficking operations, a dispute that culminated in a dramatic and violent nightclub shooting. Just 6 days before his death, Kaba allegedly shot a rival gang member, Brandon Malucci, in a crowded nightclub, escalating the turf war between his 67 gang and Malucci's 17 gang. Surveillance footage reportedly captured Kaba grabbing a bag from a friend, covering his face, and then firing at Malucci, who was later flown to the hospital with a bullet wound in his leg. Following the shooting, several of Kaba's associates, including Shemaiah Bell and Marcus Pottinger, were found guilty of related violent charges, while another associate, Connell Bamboy, was convicted of firearm possession with intent to instill fear. Though Kaba's associates were prosecuted, Kaba himself, who allegedly fired the shots that night, would have faced an attempted murder charge had he not died. The complexities of this case reflect deep challenges around law enforcement's handling of gang-related violence, officer accountability, and public narratives. For some police officials and members of the public, the BBC documentary has reignited long-standing questions about media portrayals of high-profile police cases, raising concerns about potential biases and public safety. In the wake of SGT Blake's acquittal and ongoing threats against him, the Met Police and critics alike fear that this portrayal could fuel resentment and jeopardize both police operations and the well-being of those involved. As discussions continue, the documentary has highlighted the contrasting perspectives between law enforcement, bereaved families, and media institutions, a dynamic that remains critical in shaping public perceptions of policing in complex cases. The BBC's response emphasizes its commitment to fair reporting, while police and critics argue that the program's selective presentation of facts may mislead audiences, especially regarding the nature of Kaba's threat level at the time of his death. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more updates on celebrity deaths and news updates.